Hey guys, welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. Alongside me is my co-host, Zach Leaf Libby. And make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. And let's get right into Zach's weird costume. So a few weeks ago was Halloween, and Zach promised that he would dress up as a leaf blower on the show. So he has come prepared with his leaf blower costume, and that appears to be that looks like a scary leaf. That looks like a moth or something. All right, show us how it works, Zach, since you're the leaf blower. So that is Zach's demonstration of his leaf blower costume, and that is what he wore for Halloween. I should have dressed up in my Scooby-Doo onesie to compliment you. And since we're on the joke side, before we dive into 2025 quarterback recruiting, somebody asked me what my favorite bird was a couple of weeks ago or last week on my Wednesday show without Zach, and I answered penguin. So I was talking to Zach when I was driving back from somewhere, and I said, yeah, somebody asked me on the show what my favorite bird was, and he asked me what I answered. I said penguin, and he said, that's not a bird, it's a mammal. So Zach had no idea that a penguin was not a bird. Zach, do you have anything to say for yourself for not respecting penguins and their bird species?
I'm not going to lie. I pulled over when we were talking, heading home just to see, typing in like are penguins birds, and they were. So I'm like, wow, whole life just assuming they were mammals, not birds.
Okay, this is what a degree from Central Michigan gets you.
Oh,
wow, a blow to Central Michigan, which is also the university that produced our own Anthony Broom. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into 2025 quarterback recruiting. Michigan picked up a huge commitment today from Carter Smith on 300 quarterback. I say huge commitment, and some people I feel like are going to boo. There were a lot of upset fans for no reason because On3 has Carter Smith ranked inside the top 10 as far as quarterback rankings, number 8 quarterback in the country, number 112 overall prospect nationally. He's actually ranked higher on 3 than 2024 quarterback commit Jaden Davis. So I've been very high on Carter Smith. I talked a lot about Carter Smith on last week's Wednesday show with no Zach. So let's go ahead and get Zach's opinion first. Thoughts on Michigan taking Carter Smith early and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing deep dives on his film just to, it's hard not to replay that block that he did on his film. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. But yeah, I mean, I've talked to Director of Scouting and Rankings, Charles Power, as well as National Scout Cody Belair about Carter Smith. And Charles actually said, Smith flashes JJ McCarthy. And if you really deep dive into Smith's film, like you can see it, Smith is like that kind of quarterback that, that has gotten like JJ, it's the type of quarterback that has gotten Michigan to where it is now, college football playoff berth. And right now, 10-0 with another run at the Big Ten title. Like Smith just makes plays on the run. He makes off-platform throws. He can tuck it and run when nothing is available. He is not afraid to throw it deep. He's tough in the pocket too. Doing more research on him, you find out that he's like this prolific baseball player, pitcher and shortstop. I'd have Belair Cody tell me that he's a top 5 like projected pick in the 2025 MLB draft. He also runs track, like his 400-meter relay for his team. So this is just a really, really good athlete. And on the football field, I mean, we've talked about this before, like he's a true dual threat quarterback. I think some things that kind of evolved that are going to end up being improvements for him, sort of like using his lower body to have more velocity and add more strength to his throws, which was said by the experts that that's an easy fix over time. But, in terms of the narrative, right, like I think it's really cool to see Michigan quarterbacks coach Kurt Campbell lock up a kid less than 2 weeks after his first ever visit to Michigan. And not only that, less than 2 weeks after he got the offer from Michigan. So not only has Kurt Campbell been shown that he's an elite recruiter by constant communication over the fall, visiting Bishop Verot and Fort Myers multiple times, including the bye week. But, you can see in the interviews that he's done with On3, you can see that he very, very values the culture and the atmosphere, and I guess how quarterbacks are set up to be successful at Michigan under Campbell's direction. I think the staff also values Smith as a dual threat passer with incredible upside. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to play, get a spot as the number one quarterback in Michigan. And like what Charles Powers said, he could be a multi-year starter for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I have a few different things to say here about Carter Smith. One, like I see someone already in the chat saying we want Bryce. Like just because, Bryce Underwood is the number one player in the country and has been the number one guy on Michigan's board for a while doesn't mean you should be disappointed in the take of Carter Smith. Bryce Underwood is Bryce Underwood. He's everything as advertised, but that doesn't mean that you're getting, a second. I don't know. It doesn't mean you're getting leftovers in Carter Smith. This is a guy that Kurt Campbell went down to evaluate in Florida, loved, pushed immediately. Like I wrote on the Wolverine. If you're not a subscriber to the Wolverine.com, you can subscribe right now for $1 for 1 month. But I wrote after Campbell went down to see him in Florida and they were bringing him up for that unofficial visit, I said, Carter Smith is like the guy. He's number 2 on the board right now behind Bryce Underwood. That means he leapfrogged guys like Hussam Longstreet, Bear Bachmeier, Ryan Montgomery, even George McIntyre. Like they loved Carter Smith. Getting him an offer was a formality. They just wanted, him to meet Jim Harbaugh and they wanted to do it in person. And, after the visit or during the visit and in the days after, they had discussions about the approach to 2025 quarterback recruiting. They decided that Carter Smith was a take because they really did like him that much. Carter Smith was a take based on merit, not based on, wanting to have a contingency plan for Bryce Underwood. If that was the case, they would have waited until after January to make a decision on quarterbacks, and they would have done the stupid all your eggs in one basket approach again. But with Carter Smith, this is, again, a kid they absolutely loved. And you pull up the tape, you can see why. Now, I'm a big person I'm big on in-person evaluations. Everybody knows that. I get on the road more than anybody. But I haven't seen Smith live, but if you pull up the tape, it's not really hard to miss why Campbell fell in love with Smith. I mean, he's a superior athlete. Zach mentioned some of the things that make him special. I mean, he's a legit MLB prospect. And, I love guys that excel on the diamond. I'm not a big fan of baseball, but I do think that the skill set translates really well to the football field. Guys that are really high-level baseball players that excel on the football field as well usually pan out at the next level for whatever reason. Those sports just go together really, really well. On top of that, I mean, you have a kid running track. You have a kid that rushed for 16 touchdowns this season. He's also a guy that just, I mean, you see that athleticism. You see the ability to create. I spoke to a source close to the Michigan program, and he told me, hey, we see a lot of J.J. McCarthy and Carter Smith. And there's that block, man, looking like Sunshine from Remember the Titans, just delivering that block and demolishing kids. But he's just really special as a runner, and he has the potential to be really special as a creator at the next level. He does some off-platform throws, as Zach mentioned, but his ability to escape and pick up yards with his legs, his ability to escape the pass rush and just, still deliver really nice balls are some things that really stick out about him. And, we talk a lot about him needing to clean up his mechanics, and he does. The release still is a little more like a baseball release. He doesn't have the best footwork, but man, once he really polishes up as an actual passer, I think the sky is the limit here. So in 2024, you're bringing in Jaden Davis, who's a high-level game manager. You have Jaden Davis, who is really accurate, short to intermediate, really high football IQ, great mental processing, great game manager. Really is, I've said before, has the potential to be a better version of Cade McNamara. But what Jaden doesn't bring is the playmaking ability. And, everybody always asks, well, why are you so down on Jaden Davis? It's that he's not a big threat with his legs. He's a shorter quarterback, and he's not a creator. With Carter Smith, he's definitely not as polished as Jaden Davis as a pure passer, but the upside is really, really high, man. I mean, he's, again, just a really special athlete. Whenever you give yourself a quarterback that has the ability to make plays with his legs, you have a high floor as well because he can do so many different things. So there's a lot to like about Carter Smith, especially coming in after a safe take like Jaden Davis. Now you have an exciting take in Carter Smith. And, people make a big deal about the rankings and how Smith isn't ranked high by all the sites right now. The trajectory is so high here. I think his rankings will only go up as he continues to improve as a pure passer. The athletic skill set is there. The dynamic ability is there. So his rankings are going to go up. Whereas you had Jaden Davis, who was ranked extremely high early on, and people were excited about this 5-star quarterback commit. And now he's not a 5-star on any service, and he's continued to drop because he peaked early and was limited athletically. That's not what you're going to have with Smith. His best football is way, way, way ahead of him. So I'm really excited about Carter Smith. You should be excited about Carter Smith. Chris Ewald Sr. seems excited about Carter Smith. I actually called Chris Ewald Sr. a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, man, get on Carter Smith for your 7-on-7 team. So for those that don't know, Chris Ewald Sr. is heavily involved with DEF CON, which is one of the premier travel 7-on-7 teams in South Florida. Chris Ewald Jr., Michigan's top 100 cornerback commit, is a star for that team. So trying to get them connected with Carter Smith so we can see a Carter Smith, Chris Ewald combination on the 7-on-7 circuit this offseason. And, lastly, that's another big thing. On the defensive side of the ball, you have a guy who's already the face of the class in Chris Ewald. Chris is a little more quiet, but I think he just commands so much respect and can still be, that high level recruiter as well. Similar to Will Johnson. Will Johnson wasn't a guy with this super magnetic personality, but was just really well respected, traveled across the country on the 7-on-7 circuit, much like Chris Ewald Jr. And so they have that ability to attract other top players on the defensive side of the ball. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, Michigan hasn't had a vocal leader at the quarterback position since J.J. McCarthy. You had project takes for the last couple of cycles. Jaden Davis is more of a quiet kid. I think when you look at the offensive side of the ball, you do need that vocal, magnetic leader. And that's what Carter Smith is. I think he has some of the same personality traits as J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, I don't know Carter as well as I knew J.J., at least not right now. But just from doing the interviews with him and things like that, man, there's just a lot that stands out about this kid. So I think he can be a great class leader as well. Now, landing Carter Smith does not mean that Michigan has waved the white flag with Bryce Underwood. But before we talk about that, we do have a message from our presenting sponsor, and that is Leonard Financial Solutions. Leonard Financial Solutions founder Jonathan Leonard wants to listen to you to get to know your story and how he can best help you. People often hesitate to contact a financial advisor because they think they have to know what they want first. Leonard Financial Solutions founder Jonathan Leonard will start you at square one, getting to know you and your unique situation. You don't want to outlive your retirement money. You don't want to make risky investments. You don't want your loved ones to experience financial insecurity. Leonard Financial Solutions wants to alleviate your fears by providing you with options for life insurance, income protection, retirement income, safe annuities, and Medicare. They take the time to explain the pros and cons of each product and will not rush you through the decision-making process, giving you the time you need to commit to a plan. When is the best time to sit down with a financial advisor? Now, whether you are just starting out, hoping to retire in the next 5 years, or already retired, Leonard Financial Solutions wants to help you make smart decisions about your money. Get the expert financial advice without the high-pressure sales pitch. Reach out to get started today for a free consultation at www.leonardfs.com or call 856-444-LIFE. Again, that's leonardfs.com or call 856-444-LIFE. All right, again, big shout out to Leonard Financial Solutions for sponsoring tonight's show. Let's get back to the topic. Look, like I said, Michigan hasn't waved the white flag for Bryce Underwood. Just because they took Carter Smith doesn't mean that they're going to stop recruiting Underwood. I think Carter Smith understands that, and he's still committed, which again shows a lot about his character and wanting to compete and how much he fell in love with Michigan. But, let's throw it over to Zach. You've seen Underwood more than anybody this year. You've gone out to see him many times, whether it's at the Tom Lemming Showcase or Belleville High School or at his games this fall. You've been on top of Underwood. Do you think that Michigan taking Carter Smith is going to have any effect on the way he views the Wolverines?
No. Bryce has said before in many interviews that it doesn't really matter who comes in before him, with him, or after him to any school. Like, his goal is to start immediately as a true freshman, and he has the generational traits to do so. With Michigan, with Carter, they're still trying to get him up for an Ohio State visit with Underwood. Regular contact is still taking place between Kirk Campbell and Underwood and his family at least once a week. That Ohio State game for the regular season finale, like, that would be the first time Underwood has been on campus since late July. Has not been to a game day visit yet, so they're trying to do so. But I mean, they're going to keep recruiting him until January 6th, right? Or when he's expected to announce a commitment. We all know the scheduling with Division I finals is still in question, whether or not Underwood does show up. Belleville's heavily favorited to return to Ford Field on that Sunday, the day after the Ohio State game. And we know that Underwood's a very team first, has a very, very team first type of attitude and has that character about him. So, whether it's the Ohio State game or next month in December before the dead period, like, they're going to try to get him in. We talked about this on last week's show, the positives that come with both an Ohio State game and a December visit. But, I guess there's a possibility, right? Like, I think people are kind of questioning, this Michigan's done at quarterback recruiting, but, there's a lot that goes into potentially taking two quarterbacks based on scenarios that could happen, right? Like, JJ McCarthy's draft stock is rising. I've seen on multiple mock drafts that he's the third overall quarterback taken in the draft. So if he goes high, there's a possibility that he just leaves. But there's also the possibility of backups leaving for the portal. The fact that Michigan didn't sign a true quarterback in the 2023 recruiting class. So, bringing in two quarterbacks is a smart move. In a perfect world, Michigan lands Underwood and Carter Smith. You got one guy who's, like I said, a bona fide freshman quarterback ready to take the reins. And then you have another one with very high upside that pundits have said that he could be a multi-year starter. So less than 50 days until the January 6th commitment. So, Michigan has to, the window's closing to get him on in a visit. But if they do, they would likely be the last visit. So we all know how important that is too.
Yeah, definitely. So here's the deal. Like Zach said, Michigan's going to continue to recruit Underwood until he makes that decision in January. They are very, very happy with Carter Smith. If Underwood goes to LSU, I think they'll just be fine with Smith on board. There's a reason that they took Carter Smith this early, and I agree with it. I think it was a smart move for Kirk Campbell. I'm tired of the all your eggs in one basket approach, and I'm glad it's retired. Now, I still think LSU is the team to beat for Bryce Underwood, and I've said that for a couple of weeks now. I've given LSU the slight edge, especially with Underwood not having visited campus this fall and still being a maybe for the game against Ohio State. Now, I'm not sure Smith's commitment has anything to do with Underwood. I think I would agree with Zach there. I don't think Underwood is going to be scared off by Carter Smith. I don't think Underwood would be scared off by anybody. And even when like Jaden Davis committed this cycle, I said Underwood doesn't care. I really don't think he does. I think that, the bigger thing hindering, or the two biggest things that could potentially hinder Michigan with Underwood are one, Jim Harbaugh's status, and that really didn't seem to affect Carter Smith, but I think if Harbaugh signs an extension, that could certainly help. But the biggest thing is going to be NIL. And I don't have a lot of faith that Michigan will outduel LSU, even though LSU is probably not in the same boat as maybe a Texas A&M or a Miami or someone like that. But I do think that if NIL is a big factor here, I don't have a whole lot of confidence with Michigan. So, we'll see how things kind of shake out there. He's still, on the board. They're still going to recruit him hard. We're still going to report on him. But look, if Michigan misses out on Underwood, you have a great quarterback with a lot of upside in Carter Smith. I like Carter Smith more than I like Jaden Davis. I think that Carter Smith is the best quarterback land since JJ McCarthy, especially with those back-to-back project years. I prefer the upside of Smith as opposed to the floor of Jaden Davis. And when you look at the quarterback room right now, before we move on, to the next topic, when you look at the quarterback room right now, the other thing with Bryce is, he knows that Michigan needs quarterbacks. I think, Zach kind of mentioned it there at the end with JJ McCarthy potentially going. You have JJ McCarthy who's potentially going to the draft. Not saying he is going to the draft. He could come back as a senior for sure. He loves Michigan, but JJ potentially going to the draft, right? Let's say that happens. Who's your starting quarterback next year? There aren't a lot of guys on the roster right now that give you confidence. The quarterback room is lacking. I also think you're going to have, just natural attrition, guys wanting to go places where they can probably play, like a Jaden Denegal. Not saying Jaden Denegal is going to transfer, but, he's a guy that could, if he actually wants significant time at the quarterback position, much like Dan Villari, transferred to seek an opportunity to play more quarterback. You could also have guys change positions. Alex Orji is such an intriguing athlete, but what do you do with him? Kendrick Bell came in as a quarterback, but they initially liked him as a wide receiver type of athlete. So, yeah, you could have guys switch positions. You could have guys leave, and there isn't a proven, real proven commodity in the quarterback room. And then you could have JJ leave, and you don't want Jaden Davis to start as a true freshman. Now, even though I said I like Carter Smith more, I think Jaden Davis is better equipped to start early just because he's more polished as a passer, and he is a high-level processor. I think he could come in and be a safe game manager. But, yeah, the quarterback room's a little scary there. So I think, two quarterbacks is still a possibility in 25. I think Michigan is for sure going to hit the portal and potentially take two quarterbacks out of the portal. Maybe a guy that gives you some depth, and maybe a guy that can come in and be your starter next year. So, we'll see how quarterback shakes out. But and let's say Michigan does miss on Bryce Underwood, they could still go after a guy like Husan Longstreet or someone like that in 25 that doesn't mind being part of a two quarterback class, knowing that the quarterback room at Michigan's lacking a bit. But the portal will definitely be an option for the Wolverines. And NIL hasn't shown to be too big of a problem for Michigan when it comes to portal recruiting. It's just been more high school recruiting. But that's the quarterback wrap up. Before we dive into our time on the road, we do have a message from another sponsor, and that's Barry Gallagher. He's actually written a book, Lloyd Carr's Michigan Football Journey. Millions of Michigan Wolverine football fans loved Coach Lloyd H. Carr Jr. as much as he loved the University of Michigan. This insightful book details how an interim coach stepped up for the Michigan Wolverines and won his way into the College Football Hall of Fame. Lloyd Carr's Michigan Football Journey tells a complete story of Coach Lloyd Carr's 28-year journey, 15 years as an assistant, 13 years as a head coach, to bring Michigan football back to national prominence and how he kept it there. Coach Carr's incredible work gave Michigan football fans one of the greatest era in the school's magnificent football history. No losing seasons in 13 years, one national championship, 5 Big Ten championships, and 6 bowl wins, the most in Wolverine football history. Lloyd Carr won with integrity, and no Michigan coach is associated with more program victories than Lloyd Carr. This book gives you a comprehensive look at the amazing Michigan career of Lloyd Henry Carr Jr. It is full of original research charts and tables that clearly illustrate how and why Coach Carr became a college football coaching legend. Rich Hewlett, one of Carr's first players at Michigan, wrote a heartfelt foreword that sets the tone for a closer look at one of college football's greatest coaches. Order your copy today at Amazon or at mden.com. All right. Thanks to Barry Gallagher for sponsoring tonight's show. So we'll have more on 2025 quarterback recruiting tomorrow at thewolverine.com, and for wall-to-wall coverage on the Carter Smith commitment, you can also head to thewolverine.com. Sign up today for just $1 for 1 month. That gets you premium insider recruiting information, team information, and so much more. We are close to ending the show tonight, so if you do want a question answered, make sure to leave a super chat. And also, we have a ton of viewers tonight, so like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. All right, Zach and I were on the road this weekend, seeing recruits as we always do. I saw a pair of commits and a handful of targets. Zach saw a handful of targets in Indiana, so we'll quickly talk about all of them. But we do have a super chat from Cody Johnson. What are your thoughts on getting Dante Moore out of the portal? Zach, I'll let you go first since I am in desperate need of water.
Yeah, Kirk Campbell. Well, backtrack. Matt Weiss, the former Michigan quarterbacks coach, got fired after Dante Moore enrolled at UCLA. So I guess, like, my educated guess, there's got, if Chip Kelly gets fired, Dante leaves for the portal, what ifs, there's got to be a relationship built between Campbell and Moore, because Campbell was only an analyst when Dante was a top main target for last cycle. So I don't think it's, there's got to be some relationship building, some communication if that ever transpires.
Yeah, so I thought about this and I'm like, well, Dante's just gonna go where Kenny Dillingham is now. Kenny Dillingham's the guy that originally won his recruitment at Oregon before he ultimately flipped to UCLA. But Dillingham's at Arizona State now, and they already have Jaden Rashada, who was a highly touted quarterback in Dante's class. So I'm not sure that's going to really be an option. So where does he go from there? I don't really think he'll stick at UCLA unless they hire someone that he had previous connections with. So yeah, the door could be open for Dante to return to Michigan. I always felt like Dante wanted to be away from home though, so I'm not sure that he really loved the idea of coming back home. But with Michigan still, needing a guy that can come in and start right away at the quarterback position, that is something that he may explore. I think Michigan will take a look at it. Like Zach said, there isn't a pre-existing relationship really between Kirk Campbell and Dante because Matt Weiss, had, golf cart gate with Dante Moore and, did a terrible job in his recruitment. But there is pre-existing relationships with other members of the staff, like Ron Bellamy knows Dante Moore and his family. Jim Harbaugh was involved in that recruitment. Obviously, there's familiarity with him. Steve Klingscale knows guys around Dante Moore's recruitment. Sharon Moore was involved in the recruitment a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I haven't heard anything there, and I haven't really reached out to Dante about it. He's in the middle of the season, and I don't want to bug him, but I could definitely see a situation where that actually does happen, or at least Michigan, becomes some type of player if Moore does hit the portal. And there are reports that Chip Kelly is set to be fired. So I'm sure that's why that is coming in for those of you that did not see that news on x.com. But let's go ahead and talk about our time on the road. I will start since I saw a pair of Michigan commits. I had a chance to see Devin Baxter and Manuel Beagle. This was my third time seeing Devin Baxter in person, and everybody knows how much I've really been high on Baxter throughout this process, even when he wasn't ranked at all. Now ranked as a top 250 prospect nationally on the industry ranking. And unfortunately, Baxter's senior year came to an end in a really close loss. And this in-game evaluation wasn't the best because Baxter was like at 40% health-wise. He suffered a lat injury a few weeks ago and decided to give it a try and come back for this second round playoff matchup. And he just wasn't at full strength, but you still saw the flashes. And throughout the entire season, I think I was really happy with Baxter's improvement from a technical standpoint. This is a guy with a really, really high ceiling. He has the potential to be one of the next best edge rushers at Michigan, literally a David Ojabo type of ceiling. I mean, he's going to need some time to develop, but as a physical specimen, he's really impressive. Really smart football player as well. Actually grew up playing quarterback. And the other thing is his frame, man. He's listed at 6'5", 235, but he's a bigger guy. He actually was 260 as an underclassman and cut down to 235. So he can easily bulk back up under Ben Herbert. And the unfortunate thing about Baxter is he was set to be an early enrollee, but there was an issue with a literature class. So now he will be a regular enrollee. And that's not Baxter's fault. He actually took a bunch of honors courses and he's currently enrolled in AP literature. And the dude has enough credits to graduate right now, but the state of Maryland requires a full year of literature. And there was an issue with the guidance counselor. And I don't think anybody wants to hear about that. Point is that Baxter is not going to be able to enroll early, which is a shame. He's literally just going to class next semester to take literature and do nothing else. But he could have benefited greatly from enrolling early. Either way, that ceiling is still there. And I think, a couple of years from now, Baxter is going to be a big-time playmaker on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan. Now, on the flip side of the coin, I saw Manuel Beagle, who's not talked about often, 3-star defensive line commit out of Choate in Connecticut. He's a kid that came over from Germany, played exclusively along the offensive line last year when I saw him live. He's actually still listed as an interior offensive lineman. So Zach, remember to tell me to text Charles Power, our rankings director, because rankings are coming out soon. So yes, we will have a lot to talk about next week. But Michigan is recruiting him as a defensive lineman. He played exclusively as a defensive lineman this weekend and has been playing as a defensive lineman throughout his senior year. Now, he did miss about a month of playing time, but he was back over the weekend. And you can see the upside with him too. I mean, he is still very, very raw from a technical standpoint, which can be expected for an international player that hasn't played a lot of football. But from an athletic standpoint, I mean, 6'5", 280, built really, really well. I mean, he has a really chiseled frame, not a lot of body fat on him. So I think he can play at about 320 with no problem. Michigan really likes him as a 3 technique. He brings a lot of length to the table. He's a guy that I believe runs in the 4.8, 4.9 range. So, the speed, the athleticism is really there. The length is really there as well. Just have to teach him to play football. And so, Mike Elston is one of the best teachers, I think, in college football when it comes to defensive line coaches. So you probably won't hear from Manuel Beagle for 2-3 years, but if Elston is able to teach him to play, with more technique and to just learn the game in general, I think that Beagle has all the athletic traits to be a really good defensive lineman at the next level. And like I said, I saw that on Saturday afternoon out in New England. And, there were some reps where you're just like, wow, this guy can be a monster. And then there were some reps where you're like, what is this guy doing? Because he's just running out there with his head cut off. He's not following pullers. He's not squeezing down. He's not reading his keys, doing basic things. So those things are going to have to be taught at Michigan. But again, that athletic upside is really there for Manuel Beagle. Let's talk about some underclassmen. Michigan gaining some momentum in the 2025 recruiting class. Now you have, an on 300 quarterback in Carter Smith. You have a top 100 cornerback in Chris Ewald. You're slowly starting to see Michigan build that momentum. Now a top 10 recruiting class in 2025. Zach, you were out in Indianapolis, Michigan making Indianapolis more of a priority, it seems. You saw 3 targets out there. Give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, so let's start off with Mark Zachary, on 300 cornerback from powerhouse Ben Davis. I only saw the second half of his game, but you could see glimpses of what the Michigan coaches have said to him in person on his visit in October. After the game, him and I talked about that visit. It happened on his fall break, so it was a midweek visit, which allowed him a lot of personal time with defensive backs coach Steve Klingscale and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. They showed him a lot of film and just how he would fit at Michigan. They showed him Will Johnson, Mike Sanders specifically with Sanders. Zachary talked a lot about him because, we all know that Sanders is making a huge impact on Michigan's defense after converting from wide receiver. And at Ben Davis, Zachary starts at both the outside corner and the outside receiver. He said he plans to take an unofficial visit in spring. The original plan was to take a game day visit, but Ben Davis is still in the playoffs. And if they go to the finals, that's when Michigan plays the Ohio State game. So he said it was for a good cause, but he's going to return. Again, unofficial visit in the spring and then an official visit when it's ready to take those. But, looking at his visit schedule, he's been to Notre Dame multiple times. He's been to Ohio State multiple times. And he brought that up. He's only been to Michigan once and he loved it so much, but he still wants to see more. So he wants to get more familiarity with that school as much as he has with the others. With Notre Dame, they have a huge lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. He grew up an Ohio State fan and he's visited there, like I said, multiple times. But, Michigan really values him. And you can see that. He is a true 6'0", 155, 165 pounder. He is skinny and he needs to continue getting some weight on him. But he didn't really get out-muscled on the field. The opposing team, they really only threw it to him in his radius one time, like his intended target. That wide receiver that he had played on man for, I think he had a few inches on him, but it wasn't like it impacted the one-on-one matchup. Run support, Zachary really likes to throw his body into it. He has a good enough speed to prevent the running quarterback that the opposing team had, who's currently committed to Colorado, from breaking out and making outside runs. He comes from a school in Ben Davis that's, is, I guess, for lack of better words, it's just a lot of dogs, right? Like a lot of kids who are just physical, tough, and just get after it. Zachary actually compared Ben Davis to Michigan, just how things are operated. And he saw it for himself after hearing it from his uncle, who was a Michigan fan, and hearing it from actually Chris Evans, the former Michigan running back, who also attended Ben Davis. So, like I said, Notre Dame's making a big push. Ohio State's in there with a couple others, but I think hearing from him, that Michigan is going to get a couple of returns in the spring just to get a more in-depth look shows that Michigan is a true contender. But I saw the second half of that game, but I did see the first half of on 300 edge target Damian Shanklin out of Indianapolis Warren Central. It took me 24 minutes. Well, really, it only took me 5 minutes, but after 24 minutes of seeing him play, I absolutely love this kid. 7 total tackles in the first half, 2 for loss, including a couple of quarterback hurries. He played in a 4-man defensive line front. Always played on the right side with his hand in the dirt, but 6'5", 210 to 220 pounds. Great length in his arms and his lower half. He's clearly added strength in the offseason through his time in the weight room, and he really has a frame where you can see him play at the same kind of caliber at 240, 250, 260. He gets off the ball in a hurry. He's able to fight off, offensive tackles. The team that they played is arguably the best in the state, and they just have a mammoth at offensive tackle and offensive guard. But Damian Shanklin really had their way with them in terms of just splitting double teams, getting into the backfield, causing havoc with the quarterback. He was actually held twice, but he was still able to break free. Some of his tackles, just proper form. He can get open in space. Is comfortable playing in space. Once he frees himself from a block, he uses a variety of moves. I saw him do swim, spin, rip and pull. He has the speed. He has the speed, but I wouldn't really categorize him as a pure speed rusher. Like, he's very technical, right? Like, he has a high IQ and has a set of tools in his repertoire to not just be a guy who can get after the quarterback using just his speed off the edge. So, along with just being a run stuffer, the opposing team really liked to run the ball. It was cold out the side. So in that first half, it was just run defense was really, really good from Shanklin. But yeah, he's coming up for the Ohio State game on November 25th. He was originally expected to be there for Purdue, but rescheduling happened. But Shanklin has been watching Michigan's defensive line these last 3 games. He got offered right before the Michigan State game, which he saw in person. Pass rush specialist on Michigan staff, Dylan Roney, is building a really good relationship with them so far. And you can hear it in his interviews, right? Like, he's talking about how coaches really, you can tell which coaches kind of dive deep in the film and kind of see where Shanklin fits. And Michigan views him as an outside linebacker or a stand-up edge. Shanklin has really good things to say about Michigan defensive line and just their mentality and how they play. So I think that game is going to really be big in terms of Michigan becoming more of a threat. Obviously, Notre Dame is the lead in the On3 recruiting prediction machine. He visited South Bend twice in October, so there's a lot of momentum on their side. But I think Michigan, and we've seen Dylan Roney too having a really big contribution on the recruiting trail. So with a big win with high production numbers from Michigan's defensive line against Ohio State, plus as more communication transpires between him and Roney, I can truly see Michigan being a contender, as he's going to be one that we're going to be viewing late in the fall too, because he says he's going to be patient with it. So this is one that I really think Michigan needs to grab, just based on how he is as a pass rusher and just his trajectory based on what he can become physically. You are muted.
My mic is muted. Thanks again, Zach, for that. I'll quickly go through the 2 guys I saw. I have to get on the phone with Carter Smith's coach in 1 minute. So let's go ahead and start off with on 300 offensive lineman Will Black. Tall, long, athletic tackle, guy that is coming back for the game against Ohio State. He is a teammate of Manuel Beagle and definitely one to watch next cycle. The other underclassman I saw was on 300 running back Iverson Howard, probably the guy at the running back position next cycle. Told me that Michigan's still at the top of the board, but schools like Oregon, Wisconsin, Maryland, Penn State are continuing to recruit him hard. Michigan just not really involved with a lot of elite backs nationally. Iverson Howard kind of in the same mold as a Donovan Edwards. Micah Kaapana can play in the slot, speedy back, kind of an all-purpose guy. So, he's looking to come back for a visit relatively soon, but Michigan still remains a major contender in his recruitment. All right, guys, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. I will be back tomorrow to answer all of your questions. Also, subscribe to thewolverine.com for just $1 for 1 month. Appreciate Zach for being here. We appreciate all you guys for being here and creating great discussion in the comments. It looks like they have started bullying some Ohio State invaders. So shout out to you guys. But yeah, see you guys tomorrow.